Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Today is World Meditation Day,
hmm
and
It's December 21st.
yes,
If you're, yeah.
yeah, December 21st. And this episode is one that is very foundational to Cole and myself, and most definitely my personality, uh, based on how I was raised, which was pretty different than most people. Perhaps maybe if you lived in India, it might be fairly similar, but
Or maybe the town you grew up in.
or the town I grew up in, yeah. So, and bear with us, we're gonna wrap this up nicely. Um, but I really like our Instagram, but
As we should.
it is very peculiar in the sense that we show dogs, but we don't talk about the normal dog stuff that most trainers that they talk about that you'll see online. And that is largely due to, I suppose, the emphasis and feeling that we put on the kind of unmanifest, untangible, uh, not physical, you
That
could
which can
say.
be seen.
Yeah. You could whittle it down to energy. You could do that. And that wouldn't be far from the truth. And a lot of trainers, you'll hear them say that, oh, dogs are energetic beings. They communicate through energy and so on and so forth. And we definitely agree on that. And I suppose maybe it is maybe just as important as technique, maybe even more important than technique to a degree, which is why we put such a big emphasis on that aspect of it, of dog handling, of life. But how did we get there? So I grew up in this small town called Fairfield, Iowa, and it's a small town of 10,000 people. And about half those people are just normal people they're just normal, working their jobs, farming, etc., doing what people do in Iowa. And then the other half of the town was made up of very spiritual people. The Transcendental Meditation movement, that is where their capital is for the United States. And it's been there since the 60s. The movement was started, the Transcendental Meditation movement was started in, I believe, the 60s in Santa Barbara, California. Mm-hmm. And then they moved to Fairfield, Iowa, which a lot of people back then weren't really happy about.
It's a little strange.
Pretty drastic change for them. But in any event, I grew up with something called consciousness-based education from kindergarten through college. And we studied all the normal things, math, history, social studies, etc. But then we also had this class called Science of Creative Intelligence. And we also meditated as a school before school and after school. But the Science of Creative Intelligence, that was my favorite class. I excelled at that. I was the most interested in that. Mm. And I really don't know how I passed high school because I kind of just got by in those classes. Wasn't very interested in any of those.
Mm. And then you went to university. The Fairfield has not only K through 12, but a university that they established in Fairfield,
Yeah.
an international university.
Yeah.
And you went on to study
Vedic science.
Yeah, which is in
Basically,
line with that class.
Exactly. The study of the self, going beyond the ego. And Transcendental meditation is a very specific meditation. There's all sorts of meditations out there, but this one in particular hasn't been dreamed or conjured up by anyone recently. It's been around for thousands of years, and it's been passed down from generation to generation orally. It's not been written down. And it's very systematic in its approach. It's very systematic in its teaching. And when I was growing up, I had pretty profound experiences with meditation, but I can't say the same for my classmates. A lot of them don't meditate anymore, nor were they really into SCI, that class I was just mentioning. But they were just more normal, you could say. More normal. And I remember when I was younger, my parents, we didn't have a ton of money at one point, and I couldn't go to this private school. And so I had to go to public school. And during that time, it was pretty hard for me because I was maybe 11, 12. My parents had just gotten divorced, and so I went to public school and I was bullied, and it was a really hard time for me. Day after day, I would just go to school and be bullied, and my parents at that point were kind of directing me into diving more into myself and spirituality and whatnot. And I remember these 16 principles of SEI from Science of Creative Intelligence, that class I was just mentioning. Maybe you could pull those up and read those. But these points helped me a lot during this period in my life, and then also as I got older. I constantly come back to them, and now they're pretty much integrated into my existence and memory bank, you could say.
So the 16 principles of Science of Creative Intelligence. Seek the highest first. Order is present everywhere. Life is found in layers. Inner is the basis of the outer. The nature of life is to grow. Rest and activity are the steps of progress. Do less and accomplish more. Every action has a reaction. Purification leads to progress. The source of all solutions is the field of all possibilities. Thought leads to action, action leads to achievement, and achievement leads to fulfillment. Knowledge is gained from outside and inside. Knowledge is structured in consciousness. Harmony exists in diversity. The whole is contained in every part. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. Yeah, that's powerful stuff. Oh man, to be digesting that as a child is wow.
And so it's definitely not normal. I mean, I feel like when people listen to those, they're like, oh yeah, like, sure. And so maybe some of them go over people's heads. But if you sit and think about it, you're like, okay, yeah. But these things have been, they've been just very grounding for me. And they were very grounding for me, especially back then when I was a kid being bullied. Because if you were a townie in Fairfield, then you were just the normal people, country people, farmers, etc., etc. But if you were a meditator, you were called a roo. And so I was bullied for being a meditator, bad mouthed, etc., etc. And I learned at that time to overcome being bullied and all of the feelings associated with that. Finding compassion and empathy for the kids that were bullying me through the sadness and the sorrow that I also felt, and maybe anger and rage that I had as feelings as well.
Mm.
And so I remember one little thing. A kid stole this jacket that I had just got for Christmas. It was a Chicago Bulls jacket, and he was pretty poor, and he stole it. And I think he wore it to school the next day because he wasn't thinking.
And you like it, you want to wear it.
Yeah. And I was upset, but then I got over that, and I ended up giving him the jacket because I was like, if you need this more than me, or you need it or want it enough to steal it, then you can just have it. Mm-hmm. And so it's just, in that situation, there's so many different routes that somebody could take. There's so many different routes that somebody could take. Like, maybe we could have had that kid punished through the school. Maybe if I was bullied and punched, my dad's a bad example because he probably would have given me this advice, but just to punch him back, stand up for yourself, so on and so forth. And
right, steal back from him,
something like that.
Yeah. Or you could have he could have kept the jacket, but you could have felt a lot of anger and resentment and
yeah. So there's so many different avenues I could have taken in this situation. And I don't feel personally that there's any right or wrong way, and we're going to be getting into this, but it's just a way. And I ended up becoming really good friends with everyone at that school eventually. Mm-hmm. It took time for them to, it took me time and it took them time to grow and heal, you could say, even at that young age. But we all ended up being very good friends in the end. And I suppose one of the biggest takeaways from that period of my life, as well as just growing up, is this potential for all possibilities to take place in life. That I could get a jacket, a coat that I adored, and the next day have that coat be stolen, and process that and feel the feelings, and be aware enough of all of the potential ways in which that I could act in response to that. Mm-hmm. I could go with any of the feelings. It's a choice. And being aware of those choices, being aware of all of the possible ways in which I could respond to being bullied. I could respond to my jacket being stolen. I could respond to the dog in response to a feeling that they're having, in response to someone bullying us online. Who knows what the case may be? But having this awareness and this awareness of all possibilities, and still be moving through life with preferences, but being able to pivot effortlessly if need be in a particular situation or outcome or what have you.
Something that stands out to me in this, and I feel that I learn this from you when I lack it in myself, is the ability to see the other side of what's going on and to put yourself in someone else's shoes or another being's shoes and think, what are they thinking? What are they feeling about maybe their action? And then by what I choose to do, how is that going to affect them? How is that going to make them feel by my actions or my words?
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because a lot of times when that is questioned, when that's at play, I feel that it's almost as if when I see the other side, it completely neutralizes my side.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Kind of like in your story that you're telling.
Mm-hmm.
Like there might be feelings coming up, but then when you put yourself in the other being's shoes, it becomes more clear what's going on.
Right.
And then it, at least for me, makes it harder for me to maybe do what I initially wanted to do.
Or hold on to those feelings. Yeah. Because I know the kids that were bullying me, and I know that they were being fed that from their parents.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's no way kids can develop those kinds of feelings at such a young age. It has to be from their guides in life, their parents in life. And so, but when I realized that as a young kid, and my mom helped me realize that, my stepdad, I was just like, oh, okay, this isn't them. This isn't them. And I just was patient for them to come and see who I was and like see that I was just a kid, a normal kid. And I waited for them to realize that. And then we were kids together. Mm-hmm. It was beautiful.
There's another side to that too. I mean, now, and maybe you had it as a kid as well, is I see your side of it. And if you don't see my side, that's okay.
Yes. Yeah.
If you never come around, or you come around in 20 years or whatever, that's okay.
Yep.
There's not this expectation of, well, I'm looking at your side, so you need to look at my side.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, that doesn't work.
Exactly. That, I think, is one of the most challenging things. Well, I think another challenging thing is that I'll hear online, motivational people and people who do cold baths and are just really adrenalized in life. They're like, they almost try to motivate people, and I feel like I get where they're coming from, because they're trying to motivate people, snap people out of it. But there's a flavor to it of, you don't have control over what other people feel. Mm-hmm. And there's almost this disregard, like, you do you, it's a dog-eat-dog world out there, and you just keep pushing forward regardless. And I see value in that. There is value in that. But I've also come to realize that there are other things at play, like feelings. and being aware of what somebody might be going through or have gone through, you know?
Or not even, there could be a situation that happens and someone is acting a certain way or a dog's acting a certain way. And we don't even go to a place of, oh, they must have this, or oh, this must have happened, or this. It doesn't matter
Yeah.
what the reason is behind it, because there is some reason. Doesn't matter the reason.
Yeah, we don't really spend a lot of time in that at all. A lot of trainers are like, they sit and try to analyze, why is this happening and what's going on with this psychology and that psychology. And we're just, at this point in our handling, we're just like, how can we help you feel better?
Yeah.
We have so many different tools. How can we help you feel better? That's all. That's our main goal, not why. And
or with a person, oh, I can feel empathy when I know that it's because your mom just died. It's like you can feel empathy no matter what their experience is. If it's they're going through a hard time or they're going through a great time, and that's somehow affecting the person that's receiving that.
Yeah, very true.
I want you to go back to this all possibilities aspect. I want to build on that some more because I feel that it's so, we're talking about the intangible, and it is very intangible.
And I've been thinking about this because I knew we were going to be recording this podcast. We'll come at it from a few different angles. Let's say, like, you really like Chinese food.
Well,
you really like Chinese food. And I'm not a giant fan. And that's okay. That's okay. And then some people listening could really not like Chinese food, but they could really like Italian food. Some people could really like cold plunging. Some people could not like cold plunging. Some people could like coffee. Other people don't like coffee. Some people really get affected by the weather. Other people don't really get affected by the weather. It's like these things that almost like it's a no-brainer that we can't control. And it's not so influential in life, you could say.
like the weather.
Like the weather. Well, the weather's pretty influential.
Right.
But it's more like you can't like, why would I try to convince you that Chinese food is not good? Like, it's just, there's no point in that, right?
Right.
But for some reason, when we start getting into the realm of how people live in other ways, socially, how they treat their dogs, how they handle their dogs, how they raise their children, politics, all religion, beliefs, all that stuff. For some reason, it turns into this more ignited conversation, and people get way more defensive and offensive and charged emotionally, and they lose sight of the fact that of the all possibilities just when it comes to people having different dietary preferences. It's almost like the preferences begin to turn into solid stone facts. And people double down, triple down, quadruple down, so on and so forth. They continue to double down on these solid stone facts that they have been conditioned to believe by who knows what the influence is. And they lose sight of that all possibility. Like, yeah, you can like brunch and I can like dinner. Right. And you can like it hot and I can like it cold. And
everything exists.
Everything exists.
And to try to make something not exist is
that, yes,
something that we might not want to put our attention on.
Exactly. And it's this losing sight. it's becoming more, it's the rigidity in our thoughts, the rigidity in our beliefs that it can be so detrimental to this whole harmony existing in diversity,
which is one of the principles.
which is one of the principles. And for me, for us, it's just we don't lose sight of all possibilities. Another easy example is people who are very well traveled. They typically live more in a state of all possibilities because of the exposure that they have to other cultures, other diets in other cultures, other traditions in other cultures, how they raise their children, their culture of religion, etc., etc. And that can be very eye-opening and beneficial in terms of keeping this idea and feeling of all possibilities lively in one's consciousness, lively in one's physiology.
It's almost like having the way that it feels to me, and maybe this is just me reminiscing on how it feels to travel, is that there's a respect for all possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I've traveled to Asia and they have different culture and different customs, I'm respectful of that.
Right.
And it's different, and there's respect there. And that can be lost, is
Yeah.
seeing something different and letting that be honored instead of feeling judgmental or feeling that why would that exist or how dare they or they must be lesser or greater or whatever.
And the funny thing is that some people go through that.
Yeah, totally.
And then there's other people who are traveled and they're like, that's not okay.
Mm-hmm.
They still have this rigidity to them, you know? Like this country was founded and we just broke the Native Americans. We just broke them because they were savages.
Right. Yeah, we didn't come in with a lot of respect, potentially.
No, not at all. We just took it over. And so be it. That happened.
That happened.
And we all live here.
Yeah.
Well, at least the people who live in the United States. But I'm pretty sure that every single country has the same story, pretty much.
Right.
But even today, there's cultures that we are not very fond of. Most people are not very fond of. And it's triggering.
Mm.
It's triggering enough for somebody to lose sight of that all possibility feeling. And maybe the sheer fact of the matter is that you viscerally have, or we viscerally have, a feeling of opposition to a specific thing in a different culture or in a different way of doing something in life, thinking in life, feeling in life, believing in life. But it stops there. For some. It does for us. Because we have a choice. We have a choice to have that be something that we are affected by and take action on and so on and so forth, or not.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the beauty in life, is that all possibilities exist. We have a choice. We have a choice. The beautiful thing I think about life is this element of having a choice. Because like that's what we're here doing.
As humans.
As humans, we're here existing and choosing to do this, choosing to do that, and then learning to do the same thing or learning to do the opposite thing based on how it makes us feel.
Mm-hmm.
And the response from others and so on and so forth. And then we continue to morph. And it's this beautiful dynamic process of growth and reflection. Sometimes deep reflection, sometimes very shallow. But I mentioned this school that I grew up in, and then I studied Vedic science in college. And there's many different texts, but in the Vedic tradition, there are these things called yugas. And they're periods in time, they're cycles in time. And Satyug is this period of time on earth and existence that is heaven. There's no suffering.
Heaven on earth.
Heaven on earth, essentially. The amount of suffering is like 0.0001. And then there's Treta Yug, which is 50-50. And then there's Kali Yug, which is the period where we're in now, where everything to a degree is upside down. There's tons of suffering. The inner is 0.00001% of life, and the outer is the thing that dictates. Physical reality is what dictates. Trying to figure out physical reality, trying to acquire physical things.
Getting lost in the
physical looks, all the things. Entertainment. Entertainers are wealthy. Distraction is the most important thing. And if we look at life right now, it's a pretty good reflection of Kali Yuga. Because when it comes to teachers, like they're the most undervalued.
School teachers,
spiritual teachers, they're the most undervalued things. And then we look on the opposite side of the spectrum, and it's like movie stars and celebrities and people who create things wield the most power and the most wealth on the planet. And in Satyug, it's the opposite. And it's not that Kali Yuga is a bad thing, because the funny thing about Satyug is that there's not a lot of spiritual growth because everything is already good.
Where do you grow
Exactly. But Kali Yuga presents this beautiful opportunity of such an immense amount of growth because it's so challenging to find the inner based on all of the distraction.
There's a lot of room for growth.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's just more profound. Instead of you walking and the air it's thick with bliss.
Right.
Finding bliss nowadays is something that is very challenging, and not living with anxiety, not living with the need for something external to be taken, like drugs or antidepressants and so on and so forth, or to go shopping, or to who knows what, to try to fill the void that is there due to the lack of self-awareness and self-fulfillment.
I think a part of that is also people looking for that. And so it's seeking, like, oh, is it here? Is it there? Is it here? Is it? And trying to figure out where it is. And
Yes.
then there are things that might feel better. And then we maybe hang out there instead of seeking more. And with all of this...
Well, I feel like it's just that classic. It's why we see... it's why we see technology and social media and all of that stuff being so successful right now, because it's that immediate fulfillment.
Right.
It's very shallow, but it's immediate. It's a dopamine hit. It's very addictive, but it's very shallow. The connections are very shallow. All of it's just very It's very shallow, but instant.
The thing about this is the beautiful thing about this idea of all possibilities is that this is something that Jonathan and myself have learned, and this is how we feel. If you're listening and you're feeling something else, you're like, that's bogus. Great.
Well, then that's perfect for you.
Exactly. Exactly.
Exactly.
Exactly.
That's the beautiful thing about it is that whatever someone is choosing to experience at any given time is perfect. Whatever happens at any given time is perfect and is essential to that being's growth and development.
Yeah.
But existing in that understanding is a practice.
I was just going to say it's a practice.
It's a practice because so oftentimes, like this morning, you vacuumed. We're staring here at my mom's and you vacuumed. And then it was funny because just before I walked in and saw you vacuum, and my mom was like, "Oh, I'm going to go do some grocery shopping and then come back and vacuum." And I was like, she could come back and vacuum and you could feel so many different things in response to that.
Oh, by me walking in and seeing her vacuum.
Yeah.
Even though I had already vacuumed.
Or if you said, "Oh, I already vacuumed," and then she went and did it anyways. And me
or she
smiling and thinking, because the way I would respond to it, and you've helped me with this a lot too. You've helped me in this area, grow a lot in this area, but maybe you vacuumed and then you mentioned, you're like, "I have vacuumed," but she needs to vacuum. That's what she needs to do for herself to feel like the place is clean for whatever reason. Like she has to go through the process. Maybe the process is something very soothing.
Yeah.
But a lot of people in that situation could get very defensive and angry. And it could be this explosion of situation, of feeling and so on and so forth, and feeling of contention because you're like, "I already vacuumed. Why are you vacuuming? Did I not do a good enough job?" So on and so forth. Rather than, "Oh, okay, you want to vacuum."
Or she could walk in and think, "Oh my God, I don't have to vacuum. This is amazing. I get an extra 15 minutes. Or what will probably happen is we'll have a laugh about it later because we were on the same wavelength.
Right.
Because we were both thinking about vacuuming the same morning.
Right. And it's being able to move through life almost as if you're always out of the box. It's almost like you're moving through life in like first person video game. You're playing the video game and you see your hands moving through the video game and stuff, but you have the idea and understanding there's a disconnect there. But yet you're still living and connected. You're just able to see all possibilities at any given time and have respect for others in the particular situation. Like this morning when we pulled up to the dog park, it was really busy. And I was sitting there in the truck.
With your blinker on.
With my blinker on for like 5 minutes because this person was dilly-dallying. We thought we were going to take this one person's spot, but then they were just waiting for other people. And then meanwhile, this other guy got in his truck and was backing out and then pulled out. And before I could do anything, this guy points at me and just waves his finger in his head and is like, and he pulls right into the parking spot that I was going to pull into. And there's just a whole host of different responses that people could have in that particular situation. And the funny thing is that we took a while to get out and walking. And Cole mentioned that she noticed that he didn't even get out of his vehicle, take his dogs out. He just ended up leaving after 20 minutes or something.
Yeah, Stitch likes to take his time at the beginning. I move very slowly for the first half hour. I think I take
You don't
30
get very
steps.
far. Yeah.
I do not. You and your mom could go for a walk
Yeah.
and come back and we'd still be smelling, which is fine. I'm giving him
He's
that.
old.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's older. It's a Saturday, and so there were a bunch of dogs at the entrance coming and going, and so he was saying hi to dogs and then relieving himself and then saying hi, and he was having a great time.
Yeah.
But that's every day.
Right. And, so this guy ended up taking our spot, making it known he didn't give a crap, and sitting in his vehicle, not taking his dogs out, and then leaving. And I'm like, who knows what that guy was going through? Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
And I could have threw a fit. My dad would have just lost his marbles. My dad's got some rage. And the cool thing about this living in this state of all possibilities and having a really clear understanding of, different, how, where different actions take us and so on and so forth, is that growing up, my dad was, he was intense. Let's just put it that way. And he had a lot of anger, had a lot of rage, and he would hold on to things. He would hold on to some not so good feelings towards people that have wronged him and so on and so forth. And I got to see that from the outside and observe what it did to him and what it created in his life. And I was grateful for that because I got to see that and choose the opposite. It's kind of like with Buck, him having the childhood that he had with his abusive alcoholic father, and him and his brother both growing up not that same way.
Mm-hmm.
So it's great having this vision and this perspective of all of these different things and being able to be around something like that, that kind of feelings, those feelings that my dad was having growing up for about this and that, somebody cutting him off on the freeway, who knows what, and seeing that and feeling that and as a kid not being able to get out of it, but being stuck in the car with him in those feelings, but getting to know it pretty intimately and going beyond it, growing past it.
Making a choice.
Learning that I have a choice in the matter.
Yeah, there's a nice piece of this speaking on emotions and feelings in that way that I have started to cultivate and notice, which is the fact that I can have an experience of happiness, of grief, of boredom, of sickness, and be in that feeling, but still notice and still recognize the other side of it. So be in bed sick and not feeling well and having that experience and not throwing that experience away. I can't have this. I can't be sad. I can't hurt or whatever. But within that feeling, it's like being inside the box and outside of the box. I'm in the box of I feel sick or I'm in grief or I'm in elation, but I'm not so lost and consumed by that I forget about the other experiences, that I forget that I'm in a box and that there are other things out there.
Right. Or that this experience is a good thing.
Yeah.
Turning it into a good thing. Like, I'm not, this isn't me. I'm not knock on wood. But this isn't me saying that I want to get sick, but I don't really mind getting sick anymore because when I'm sick, I use that time to rest and reflect deeply.
You do a lot of reflection when you're sick.
And like I was just sick and for a few days. It doesn't happen very often, but I was like, what was coming to me was just a flood of memories, like just running through my whole life. And it was beautiful. I
Mm.
was getting to run through all of these different experiences I had that I haven't thought about since I had them.
Mm.
And I was able to witness all of that
Mm-hmm.
and see value in it and appreciation in the fact that I didn't feel that great.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a way to see the beauty in whatever human experience is going on, and that can be hard.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also a feeling of like I can be in a really high place of happiness and be in that knowing that that's not forever.
Yeah.
And that's a little depressing. Like some people might not want to have that experience because but you feel so good. You're flying high. Just be in that. Just get lost in that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, some people like the roller coaster, but the funny thing is that even the people who like the roller coaster, it's it's the same thing. You're just almost aware. It's just the thought and the awareness of the fact that that experience isn't going to last forever. And so the person who likes to experience things and so on and so forth to like the deepest, fullest extent of elation and turn a blind eye to the opposite, eventually the opposite will come and they won't be able to turn a blind eye to it.
Right.
It's just being able to experience those things at the same time, which we find value in. And I've found value in creating and facilitating in my own physiology.
Well, back in the day when you and I met, and I was 20 when we met, we would be out with the dogs. I think I was a little older when I started. Not by much, though. We'd be out with the dogs, and I remember feeling the roller coaster of life, feeling high, feeling low, feel like I was being whipped around
Mm-hmm.
by the human experience, by emotions. And I remember you either embodying it or talking to me about it, this way of not getting lost in it. And I remember you saying, I think I was having like a great day. Something might have happened at university and I was having a great day and you said something like how you can get lost in happiness too. And I remember being triggered by that because I was like, but this is a good feeling. How could you say that? And
Yeah.
I want to hold on to this. I love this high that I'm in right now. And something that I've learned from you and I've been practicing now for a long time is, and we talk about it a lot, is this place of enjoyment in that to be full on a deep or more full on a deeper level. And so when the ups and downs happen, I'm not getting whipped around anymore.
Well, it's just that you feel an experience, not just an intellectually, but an experientially, that the good is just as good as the bad,
Right.
and the bad is just as good as the good.
And the good is just as bad as the bad. And the
Yeah.
bad is
Yes. They both are. If the brightest white is present, the brightest light is present, the only way that that is possible is because of the darkest dark. It can be a very challenging thing to navigate, especially if one hasn't had a lot of suffering in life. Because suffering in life it is the thing that will test our ability to maintain the light and see the light in the darkness while being surrounded and consumed by the darkness. And there's obviously varying degrees of this. This was a very interesting experience for me growing up. how I did, and then entering into the dog industry. Because we were practicing dog psychology and then later using e-collars and whatnot. But I remember looking at other trainers and looking at Caesar and Junior, his dog, and then what was this other dog's name?
It's like Daddy.
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 Yeah. And I remember looking at, number one, seeing Caesar and holding him in high regard, and looking at Junior and also holding his dog in very high regard. And at some point that changed. And I feel like it was because I'd gotten so good with working with dogs. There was no dog that I couldn't work with. Like every single dog that we brought into our existence, we assimilated into the pack. But there were still problems that would happen. There were still things that came up. And so from that point on, I was like, there's more. There's more. I'm going to seek more. And so now I look at Junior and other dogs, and I look at other trainers' dogs and everything, and they don't do it for me. I don't see the depth at which I wanted to experience a relationship with a dog.
And this is also, I mean, this is not to say that that is not a beautiful being.
No, not at all.
Or that they have a special relationship. Like
yes, exactly.
That's not connected.
I'm not trying to downgrade or downplay what it is that they do and have done and accomplished and what they feel and experience together. That's not what I'm saying. It's just
who they are.
It's just that at some point I grew to wanting something different and more than what I was seeing.
Right.
And then enter the gentle method and natural horsemanship, and
where you did see something that you liked.
Yes, that's where I saw the transcendent more present, where I saw more magic happening in the relationship between those beings, and that was inspirational. And so it was funny because I grew, and then I hit a ceiling. And then thankfully, I was open to there being more beyond Caesar and Junior. And I didn't see it in the dog industry. I still don't see it in the dog industry. No offense to other trainers and whatnot in the dog industry, but I did see it in natural horsemanship.
Yeah.
And my brain was like, I don't care if it's a horse. I'm like, all possibilities.
Yeah.
If they can do it with that being, then we can do it with a dog. But it's just having there be this potential for something that I haven't seen or read about or heard about.
Yeah.
And knowing that it can still come to fruition and can still come to be.
I feel that feeling or experience probably comes to those who believe in religion. And their religion has a bad reputation to some people, but they believe in what they can't see.
Yeah. There's a lot of belief
it.
In supernatural kind of.
Yeah, in God,
ethereal,
in spirit, in whatever. And that is all possibilities.
Yeah.
That is a quality of it, is that something I can't see, because I can't see it, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Right.
And because I can't see it because I believe it's God, or because I don't see it in my industry.
Right.
Or I don't see it in my relationship yet.
Mm-hmm. But it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist.
It doesn't mean that it doesn't, or it couldn't exist.
Science is getting more and more to a place of the perceiver is very important. And what we think is very important in creation, in what we perceive. And we can just I mean, the two slit experiment or Schrodinger's cat. Those are two physics things, but we're not going to get into that. But
what's cool is that the more I feel open to all things that exist, the less that things shock me.
yeah,
Like an alien could walk through our door and I would be like, oh, hey,
yeah,
that exists.
yeah,
Welcome. What's
yeah.
going on?
Aliens could like become more evident in the next month or 2 years, 3 years, whatever, and it's just gonna be like, that's cool.
Right.
Whenever.
Or they come out with studies where they're finding consciousness in trees or they're finding it in things. And I'm like, well, yeah, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's cool because it's again a moment where I don't feel like I'm getting moved by things,
Right.
consumed, triggered, or stuck, because they can come out with something like trees have more consciousness, and then I can get stuck on that, and I can get consumed in that and lose my ability to see that there could be more, or that could be wrong, or whatever something else could be. I want to go back to the intellectual versus knowing, because I feel that is so relevant in this industry, in a lot of industries.
Yeah, I guess a good example of this is I hadn't really experienced, like, I was connected to this one dog, my first family dog, you could say, who'd passed away on Christmas Day many, 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 many years ago. And that was hard for me, but I was younger and it didn't really hit as hard as Juno passing. And up to that point, I hadn't, like, even my grandfather passing away, like, I wasn't super close with him, so it didn't hit as hard. And so I had a level of empathy for people when their dogs would die or their family members would die, and it was hard for them. I had a little understanding, a little understanding of what that felt like.
You had an intellectual understanding.
There was more of an intellectual understanding because it was more in the head and less in the heart. And then when Juno passed away, it was not intellectual at all. It was very hard. It was so brutal. It was so hard. I just remember at sometimes, I would just see something that would remind me of him, or just have a thought, or his image would pop into my head, and I would just start bawling. And there was this guy that you and I had seen at the dog park here in Colorado many times.
We still see him.
We still see him because he's there every single day. And if we happen to be there at the same time as him, then we see him. But he was this guy. He had two younger dogs who were mobile and agile, and he'd run around the dog park in front of him, and he would be behind them pulling a cart with his old basset hound that could no longer really get around easily. They still took him to the dog park, and Cole and I would scratch him, and he would boop noses with Juno and Stitch, and just very wholesome watching him. And then we left and Juno passed away, and then we came back a year later and we saw him, and he was no longer pulling a cart. And we had a moment because he mentioned that his dog died, and I gave him a hug, like, immediately, because I knew how hard it was. And that was when I had, it's just a different level of empathy and sympathy and love and compassion. that I had experienced. And he is like a stranger, more or less. And I just gave him a hug. And now, like, he knows my name. I know his name. And it is just, there was a moment of connection there on something that was very painful, but also something very beautiful. And I guess that's kind of one example of intellect versus experience.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a morbid example, but
I think it's a beautiful example.
beautiful. But yeah, it's different feeling something than knowing or understanding something and not feeling it. You know, it's like having an understanding of a strawberry and reading it thousands of pages of literature about strawberries, but never tasting a strawberry. Like, it's not going to be the same.
Yeah.
So, and that kind of leads me to another point where that kind of, I guess, just my whole life is a culmination of things. But years ago, when we threw out everything in the dog industry that we had learned and everything, now I look at and feel the dog industry just in a much different way. Like, when I am online and I see a video of a trainer and this trainer, that trainer, really popular, hundreds of thousands of followers, and on YouTube or Instagram, whatever the case may be, I'm aware of lots of just subtle things like language. Like them saying, stop doing this with your dog. Stop doing this with your dog. You're an idiot for doing this. Stop throwing birthdays for your dog. Stop coddling them.
Your dog can't do this. Your dog can't do that.
Don't do this.
Yeah.
Don't do that. Don't do this. The reason why this, the reason why that. As soon as I hear that stuff, I go in the opposite direction. Because to me, that's not a two-way conversation. Like, it's pretty obvious to me that how those people handle dogs and feel dogs, and I don't want anything to do with them. But that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's okay that they do that, because some people maybe are conditioned to being told what to do.
Or they like it.
They like it.
Yeah.
Because they've been conditioned, and that's what helps them on their path in this particular life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. In the fact that they're so intense and they like to bully people around with how they handle their dogs, and they like to bully dogs around and force dogs to do this. And they have no problem inflicting pain on dogs, maybe even inflicting pain on themselves. And that has value. It has purpose. But it's being able to see that I wouldn't want anything to do with them. And I will continue to choose to not have anything to do with them. But that doesn't mean that they need to go away and stop existing. And similarly with positive only, like, they're just so soft, and I would say that they have a really hard time dealing with conflict, potentially, with dogs, and they're so sensitive, and they want to be so sensitive. Like, maybe they've grown up and they were bullied, or who knows what the case may be. And because of that, if a dog is at a certain threshold of intensity or reactivity or aggression or something, they just choose to euthanize them if drugs don't work.
Yeah.
And that's okay too.
Yeah.
Because that has, like, they're helping millions of people on their path. But one thing we see is just this weird kind of duality or it's not a duality. Well, it is a duality, but it's the casual feelings that people have about dietary selection and preference. It's those feelings turning into solid feelings and beliefs that we were talking about originally, and then projecting those onto others and losing sight of the value in the opposite.
Yeah. Or in what's different.
Losing sight of that. And within that, creating more conflict.
Yeah. Well, that comes back to how our actions make our environment feel. And I feel that when we're more blinded, we're blind. We can't see certain things, certain effects, or maybe we don't care to see them, or we don't feel that that would be valuable to see.
I joke around that we're the actual positive only dog handlers because we see the positive in the force trainers, and we see the positive in the balance trainers, and we see the positive in the positive only people. But the positive only are definitely not positive only, because if you're not positive only, then you're evil. So
if you're not positive,
exactly positive only. And the way the positive only treat humans who are opposite to positive only is not very positive only.
Yeah.
And if I've heard some of their people say that science is a behavior, or behavior is a science. And I'm like, is science just applicable to dogs, or is that transversable to humans as well? Because it doesn't seem like you're really doing positive only. You're going about it in a way that is very subversive to and counterintuitive to the way you handle dogs.
And this is general.
Yes.
Like, there are going to be people, everyone's unique. Everyone's going to have a varying degree of their own experience, their own feelings. Some positive only people might be super accepting of everything in life.
Very
and
true.
Same with so we're not putting people in boxes. What this reminds me of, or brings up for me, is something that I enjoy about the process and the path. This path that we have chosen is that the more I cultivate this feeling of openness and acceptance and
all possibilities,
the more I feel that, the more neutral I feel.
And the more harmony.
I feel.
Yeah.
And what's great is that is what I want to cultivate and teach the dogs.
Yeah.
Is to have this baseline of neutrality through life.
Yeah.
And so it's beautiful that the experience comes through the person, and then they can show that and embody that for the dog.
Well, it's interesting because how we used to handle dogs did not embody this value.
Yes.
At all. We treated dogs more like dogs and less like beings. We were like, oh, dogs, this is how dogs communicate amongst each other, so this is how we'll do it. Observe dogs. A little puppy steps out of line, he's going to get corrected by his mom. And it's like, okay, and so that's what we should do, and we try to emulate that and stuff. Where it gets tricky, where it really changed for me personally to a degree, was when I started working with a horse, which is 1,000 pounds. And I'm like, you can't topple that animal. Like, we can get away with it with dogs, but we can't do that with a horse. It's just not possible. You gotta go about it in a different way. But then it's also just putting a dog or a horse in a box and like, this is how you act, so this is how you'll always act.
And not only is this how you act, but this is how I'm going to act.
Right.
Instead of I'm going to act in a different way,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what I'm going to show you.
Yeah.
And that's a powerful thing in working with animals or people. You know, animals and people are the same. But it's living what you're teaching, which is a reason why some people can move through the gentle method. They can be doing the gentle method, and they're not doing the gentle method.
Right.
Because of the foundation. Because of,
you can be going through the motions but not getting anywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, because there's two out. There's the external and there's the internal. And Buck always says in his workshops, he speaks about the energy behind riding and getting in a flow and connecting with the horse. And he's like, I can't help you with that. Mm-hmm. You have to find that on your own inside. And I've always resonated with that because he can help you with the external and technique and probably call out when you're not having the right energy, but he can't go inside your physiology and help you with that. It's something that you have to learn through trial and error.
Yeah.
And learn to navigate the ups and downs to get to more equanimity.
Yeah.
Because if there's a storm inside of us and then there's a storm inside of the dog, it's not really feasible for us to help calm their storm.
Yeah.
And so neutrality and equanimity is something that I feel it's so valuable in order for us to help a dog. And for me, like we used to handle dogs, now we handle beings. And there's so many dog trainers out there, thankfully, because so many people just want to train their dog and learn how to handle their dog, which is fine. But for us, we handle beings in dog form. Mm-hmm. We're aware of the aspect of the being, both in ourself as well as the dog. It's a being that is in the form of a dog and that has their own expression and so on and so forth, but it's a being. It's not just a being that's full of instincts and then that's all that their existence is and that's
all that we see.
All that we see and work with. That's why we look at positive only and other forms of dog handling and we're like, that's so, there's a depth to it that you're not getting to, and that's the being, because you're just dealing with the instincts and the senses. And there's more to life than those.
Yeah. Well, I feel that when this concept is the same if we're looking for a guide in a human form. So we're talking about if there's a storm in us, how are we going to help a storm in another dog or a horse? But also, if there's a storm inside of me, how can I help another person? More and more, that's what I look to in my guides. Mm-hmm. Is do they hold a quality in themselves that I highly value and perhaps can learn from? And then within that, because we guide people in workshops, that's a big reason why I want to become better as a person. I want to become the best version of myself so that I can give that to others. Mm-hmm. So that I'm not experiencing a storm and then trying to help a person and their dog. So that I'm coming from the best place I can in order to give as much as I can to those that we come across. That's a big reason why, like, I sit down and meditate, is I'm like, yeah, it feels good to me and it feels good to Stitch and it feels good to you and our relationships. But then it's bigger than that.
Right. Well, I mean, you practice Buddhist meditation before you practice TM, and I'll just speak on what I notice from my own life, and then also our relationship. But if there's times that go by, periods of time that go by when I don't meditate, I notice it.
Same.
Life is a little. I've meditated since I was 10, so I'm. It takes a lot for me to feel things.
We're talking on a pretty subtle level.
Yeah, it's very subtle, but I notice it subtly. But I also notice it with you as well.
Yeah.
Like if you don't meditate, life can be a little more up and down.
Mm-hmm.
You can be a little more sensitive than you normally are.
This is
If you're more consistent with your meditation.
Yeah, I think the realization of that is of getting consumed in life and dropping something like meditation, because I've been doing TM for 13 or 14 years. I've been meditating for like 16 or 17 years. Is that something I've had to learn through that time?
Mm-hmm.
Is falling out of meditation and then seeing the fallout and
remembering like, oh, maybe that has an influence on...
why don't I feel as good? Why, why is this slipping? And this is over time. This isn't like, oh, I missed today's meditation and everything falls apart.
Right.
But that's been a big reason why I'm more disciplined in it now, is that it's like brushing your teeth, like drinking water. There are just things that you do, that going out, walking, things that you do that if you don't do, things start to fall apart.
Yeah. The way I like to look at it is, or in my experience is, I used to feel things more like a tightly woven mesh, and this is kind of how I view existence and beings, whether they're dogs or humans, is depending on what we come in with, we're all a mesh. And the good dogs, like a good dog, in my opinion, a finished dog is one that has a very expanded mesh and is capable of experiencing all sorts of things in life, pressures in life, weirdness in life, and it passes through them effortlessly because the mesh is so expanded and expansive. As opposed to, let's say, not an old soul, but like a new soul. They're a finely woven mesh, and everything is getting stuck in there. Everything is getting stuck. That's like a feral-minded dog, a really aggressive dog, a dog that has lots of trauma, et cetera, et cetera. It's just, they're finely woven, and everything gets stuck in them. Or somebody who is really on the roller coaster of life. They're just a finely woven mesh. And they just get moved by everything. And they hold on to more things. And everything, just like things from when they were 10 are stuck in there. Things that happened to them 2 years ago are stuck in there. But meditation helps you expand that mesh and sit in an existence of all possibilities. So something that happened to you when you were 10 or 2 years ago, good or bad, is just part of this abyss of life that is, or expanse in life that is
flowing through you.
Life, and that flows through you. Yeah. Just like money comes and goes, and water comes and goes from our body. Like, whether we pee or sweat or whatever the case may be. But life is a flow instead of life being a stream that's backed up, So it's, that to me is something that's very, very powerful and very potent. And so when it comes to handling dogs, when I'm handling a dog and how we handle dogs now, it's just, we understand that things take time. Like if somebody is in love with someone, it, as we can all reflect in life, right? Maybe when we were younger, we were in love, our first love, we loved someone. We can't just like block that out. It can't just go away. It takes time for us to go through that process of loving somebody, and then maybe somebody else comes into our life and then that love fades and a new one sparks up. But we look at dogs' feelings and their behaviors in this way, is that they can take time to go away. And they're not it's not a situation where we handle dogs and we're like, no, you don't love them anymore.
Right.
You can just cut the love
now.
out, like surgically remove the feeling from the dog. Some trainers believe. We know that some trainers, they're like, if you go to a dog trainer who can't fix your dog in one weekend, then they're worthless.
Or an board and train.
Or a board and train. We just don't function like that. That's like going to a therapist in our eyes and being like, I'm having these feelings, and the therapist saying like, I can fix you in 2 days.
Right.
It's like, it's just not feasible in our eyes. And then like, it's not really feasible in life in our eyes either, because those things take time to unravel.
It might
you can think that you can get away with it, get the feeling to go away, but it's maybe we just push it really deep down or distract ourselves from the feeling, which is what trainers do with dogs' feelings. They distract them or they punish them for feeling these things. And Cole and myself and people who practice the gentle method, and what we try to help them realize is that there are all possibilities in terms of the feeling. So the feeling can stick around for a longer period of time. It could also not stick around for a long period of time. And in the meantime, you're just there holding the dog's hand and guiding them through life and trying to help them through the feeling until it dissipates and they choose a different feeling.
Until they're ready.
Until they're ready.
I think it's...
And this concept is so drastically different than the dog industry. But it's in natural horsemanship. That is the foundation of natural horsemanship. That's what they talk about in terms of syncing up with the animal, the horse, finding harmony with the horse. That's how we find harmony with the horse. But I don't think that that's possible if we're not coming at it from this standpoint of expandedness and acceptance of all possibilities of the feelings of other beings.
Well, that also can happen. I have two things here. That can happen with, this is very common, is that a dog is having an expression. Maybe it's resource guarding. And that starts to wane, but then a different expression pops up. And now they're doing this other thing, or they're exploding at like the door when they've never done that. And people can be stuck there and wonder, and why is it coming out this other way now? This is gone, but now it's over here. And anything is possible in a dog's growth through what they're growing through.
Yeah. And time is a factor in that too, is that time can kind of slip in and we're like, I want this to be gone. And it's like, well, that's what you want.
Right. What does the dog want?
That's what I want. What does the dog think about that? You know? And then there's this whole, it's just, yeah.
The other point I had that came to mind is that you were talking about this feeling, let's say it was of love, going away. But it's also the opposite of like a person. So a person experiences great love and then we say, just cut it out, and how that takes time. It also is the case of a person experiences like a loss of trust.
Mm-hmm.
And we also can't go to someone and say, trust me.
Yeah.
That is another, you
You
can't force it.
Yeah.
It's something that has to be built over time. Just like if we wanted to dissolve something, that's going to take time. Also, rewriting something and building it back in, like building trust back in to a being, that takes time too.
Right. I feel that to me is something that Merlin and working with horses helped with, because we can't force them because they're so big and they're so dangerous. But with dogs, we just get away with it because they're small and they're not as dangerous. But most of the time, what we see is a lot of steps being skipped and feelings being trampled on, or who knows what, because we can overpower the dog.
Yeah.
We're not going to get into it now because we'll get into it in other podcasts, but I feel like the ego is also another element of this that is very finite and attached to these more selfish feelings. And just like with there's light and dark, lightness and darkness, good and evil, and so on and so forth, the ego, ultimately, I feel that everyone is coming from a place of more fulfillment, wanting more fulfillment. And this is also an element of all possibilities, is having that idea be an experience for other people, is seeing that even if somebody is very egotistical or very sharp, very angry, rage-filled, hate-filled, so on and so forth, they're seeking harmony.
Yeah.
They are seeking harmony just as similar as a Buddhist monk is. They're just going about it, and they're going about it through rage and hate and anger and so on and so forth.
A different path, yeah.
And so there's beauty in that. And even the people who they say probably about us, like, oh, Oregon Trails, they take how long to help dogs? Why don't they just correct them? Just hit them with 150 on the e-collar and just stop the behavior. That's more beneficial. Just stop the behavior. Those people that look at us, or whatever the case may be, they're coming from a place of wanting to help.
Yeah.
And that's beautiful. It's a different flavor than how we go about it. But
there needs to be different flavors.
But that's okay.
Yeah.
We see that that's okay. We're not going to go into their court and try to change them, or try to change the laws to make it illegal for cages or illegal for shock collars or whatever the case may be. Go and bully them online. Like, it's just, it's okay.
Yeah.
Because people need to go through that. And we also, and this is kind of touchy and maybe a little taboo and probably going to be a little triggering for people, but we also look at dogs. We don't look at dogs from a dog standpoint. We look at them from a being standpoint. And beings come into this life to learn and grow a whole host of different things, just like humans do. And because of that, those dogs that are put through a positive only program that doesn't succeed and then they get deleted from life, or a force trainer or a balance trainer that's subjected to food and toys and then 100 on an e-collar, that's part of their journey and growth in life in this form as a being. And we also see value in that process. There are different planes of existence. We're all learning and growing, and it's not just the humans that are doing that.
Yeah.
And this may sound a little weird, but we humans love to anthropomorphize life based on us being the pinnacle of existence, which is fine. But
we're just coming from our own experience.
Yes.
Yeah.
But who's to say that a dog feels less, or a horse feels less, or another human feels less? They just feel differently.
Yeah.
The expression of feeling comes through in a different way. The expression of feeling and the absorption of feeling as well.
And the experience of life.
The experience of life.
Yeah.
Like, we love to anthropomorphize things, and it's just like, who knows how a rock feels, how a blade of grass feels, how a stream feels, like
how this microphone feels.
Exactly. Like, there's just, we love to, as humans, put limitations and boundaries on things.
Yeah.
Stitch is deaf. His life could be so limited.
Yeah.
Far more limited than dogs that have all 5 senses. But on the contrary, you built your skill set enough up that he is probably more experienced and exposed in life than a lot of dogs that have all their senses.
Yeah.
He is off leash. He's been off leash 9-10 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Of course, you use a leash if it's legally necessary.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I could have easily gotten him. He was young. He was troubled. And thought, you need an e-collar, because otherwise how am I going to control you? Or
off leash.
Or there's no way you're going to get off leashed on unfenced property. There's no way you're going to go to a dog park and socialize, or all these things. You need a bell on your collar so I can hear you, blah, blah, blah. Instead, I just thought, oh, you're different.
Yeah.
You learn differently. And actually, I feel that I've become more refined in my skill because I'm also handicapped working him.
Yeah.
I can't just call out across the room, leave it, or I can't just recall him if he's over playing with someone else.
Yeah, well, us people who can use our voice are way lazier.
Yeah. I mean, when I got him, because he was off leash, I was chasing him around like crazy.
Yeah.
My awareness, it wasn't, I'll stand here and give you an audible and see what happens.
Yeah,
it was, I'm going for you.
Yeah.
And I could have in that moment said, you're staying on leash, or let me put an e-collar on you because I don't want to run after you. But I didn't want to limit him.
Yeah. Yeah, so you put forth so much more effort.
Yeah, I limited myself.
Yeah, you did. You did.
In order for him to be unbounded.
Yeah.
I feel that also some people in life, they can read a story or see a video on the dodo or whatever, and it's of a dog who is overcoming something, or of a person who overcame a disability, or who did something that was impossible to them, and they moved outside of limitations. And that is incredibly inspiring for people, incredibly moving for people. Maybe not everybody, but a lot of people feel deeply about those things, about not being limited.
Being more unbounded.
More unbounded. And maybe you're dealt a hand that is more challenging with society, but that's okay.
Yeah.
It just means that the path is different.
But there's all possibilities, and you can write a different story.
Yeah.
Or blaze a new path and be inspiring for other people.
Yeah, exactly. Or for other dogs.
Yeah. Yeah. Another, coming back to this handling of dogs, is and having this idea be more of an experience of all possibilities and being very dynamic in that is, let's just say, if a dog is feeling darkness, we don't have any problem with darkness. I have spent so much time meditating. At one point, I was a monk. At multiple different periods of my life, I was a monk, more or less, and a celibate. And I would, I would meditate at one point when I lived in India for 12 to 16 hours a day. And when you sit that long with your eyes closed, it's not always sunshine and rainbows. You have really weird, dark thoughts uh, based on things that you've seen, things that you haven't seen. Just who knows? Some stuff comes out of the woodwork, out of the darkness, out of the abyss that is your being. And I've spent so much time sitting with those feelings, as well as weird, abstract feelings and thoughts, as well as love and light filled thoughts. But sitting with, you don't have really control over those thoughts either, and at least not in transcendental meditation. You learn to let these thoughts pass through you and sit there as long as they need to sit there. And if it gets uncomfortable, then you make a change. But I've had so much experience sitting with negativity and sitting with darkness and sitting with positivity and sitting with light and sitting with neutrality that I hold them all of equal value. I don't believe that life has to be suffering, but I believe that suffering is not a bad thing. I don't seek it, and I'm actively pursue eradicating it as best I can in my life, as well as the lives of other people, and the lives of other beings and the world and the universe. But I also am realistic in the sense of, what is the opposite of suffering? What is the opposite of light? The opposite of light is darkness. Without darkness, there is no light. Mm-hmm. And so while I may want to minimize suffering in my life and dogs' lives and other people's lives, there's no disdain for darkness. There's no disdain for suffering, because without it, there wouldn't be the highlighting of what good there is in life. But having this be a visceral experience it takes time to practice that and sit in that. Some people, it takes a long time. Other people, it doesn't take very much at all. Some people come into this world and all they have to do is see a butterfly fly, and then they live in this experience. Or maybe, who knows what, something negative happens, and then they pop into this experience, and that's what their life is filled with. But when we're handling dogs and they're doing things that we don't necessarily want them to do, we don't poo-poo their feelings or try to distract from their feelings, because those feelings that they're having are of equal value to any of the other feelings that they have in life and expression in life. And that, to us, is the big difference between how we handle dogs and come at them, and how we come at people, and how we come at life as a whole than others. Mm-hmm. Is that we don't look at the darkness in a dog and the fear in the dog as something that we want to go away in a particular timeline. We realize that we're going to be there guiding them and trying to help them see the light as best we can, but it's going to take time, unknown amount of time on our end for them to choose to feel something different.
Yeah.
And we don't try to speed that timeline up with man-made concepts of distracting them from the feeling. Because just like coming back to this feeling of love, like if you love somebody but they don't love you, let's say, or maybe they do, but let's say in this case they don't love you but you love them, that's hard.
Yeah.
And so we can choose to distract ourselves from that, but it doesn't negate the fact that you still love the person and they don't love you. That has to go away in time. You can drink a bunch of alcohol and try to forget about it for a period of time. You can smoke weed. You can go shopping. You can go buy this. You can go watch a movie. Who knows what the case may be, to distract yourself from the fact that you love that person, but they don't love you. But that just takes time for it to go away and for something to replace it.
Yeah.
So we just don't try to speed up the process. We are respectful of the feelings, whether they're good or they're bad. We try to highlight the good and highlight the harmonious aspects of it. But harmony is the existence of the duality and understanding in life.
Yeah.
That both darkness exists as well as light exists. And so if I'm working with a dog and they're full of darkness and anger and fear and so on and so forth, I'm going to help them find the opposite of that coin. Find more of the light so that they have the understanding of the darkness, which they have right now, but then they also have the understanding and the experience of the light. So there's harmony. And on the flip side, a lot of times people come to workshops, not a lot of times, but sometimes people come to workshops and they're just like, my dog's good. And I'm just like, okay, let me see. Let me see how good. And I'll search for the darkness in them. And usually I find it. But to me, if you give me a jolly dog and I start poking around and I find some darkness, then that is a beautiful thing. It's like why horsemen work with them in the way they do before they get on the horse's back, is they can visually look at a horse and be like, you seem pretty decent, and hop on, and then find out later that that was a mistake. They could have done some poking around and put some pressure on the horse here and pressure here to figure out that there's some little Jekyll and Hyde situation going on in the horse. And so seeing a dog that is really jolly and so on and so forth, well, what do you do when life is what will you do when life puts some weird stuff in front of you?
Yeah.
Some hard things to deal with. What are you going to do in that situation? Because we like to poke around in that before we allow dogs to get off leash. We do so much searching to figure out what is going to be the response from the dog.
Yeah.
And then if we do a lot of poking around and nothing comes up, check. That's a good dog.
Well, I feel that if it's a jolly dog that lives in the light, how do they handle the darkness? Because life has darkness.
Yes.
And if they get moved and reactive, or they want to move away from the darkness, or they don't like the darkness, that is something that we help them feel better in.
Yes.
Because life is both. And they, as much as we enjoy beings living in the light, there's a maturity that comes when they understand what life is.
Yes.
And then being able to navigate both sides with awareness and grace, not just one.
Yep. It's having like an emotional endurance, intellectual endurance, uh, feeling endurance, awareness endurance to such a degree that it's not just in the presence of one or the other. Can you experience the other side of whatever coin whatever side of the coin is opposite where you normally live and exist in?
And then whatever side you're in, do you get lost in that side?
Yes.
Do you get lost in the darkness and then you forget the
Or
light?
do you hold
Or
on to it?
yeah, or do
Yeah.
you get lost in the light and you forget the darkness?
Yeah.
Like, it's pretty much just everything we practice within ourself is what we work with the dogs to practice.
Yeah. I suppose we'll wrap it up here. But one reason why we wanted to talk about this stuff before the next few podcasts is because we're going to be expressing some things that are a bit more integral to us, observations and feelings. And we wanted to lay a foundation with which people could listen with and understand that we may talk passionately about certain things, this topic, that topic, and so on, and present different ideas. But this is to convey the fact that we're not against other ways of doing things. We're just for other things and presenting a different way of thinking and feeling for people who may be searching for this different way of thinking and feeling.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't exist as of yet. Maybe a little bits here and there from this trainer, this person, that person, but we just wanted to give our thoughts on the matter and also at the same time really have it be known that while we have our own thoughts and feelings, we respect those of others.
Yes.
So, so as I mentioned, I lived in India and I did long programs, long meditations every day. And I remember one meditation that I was doing, and I don't remember what hour it was, but I was sitting there and this image of stairs came into my awareness. And so I started walking up these stairs and I looked everywhere around me and it was just an abyss of nothingness. And I got to the top of these stairs and they just ended. And then it was, if I stepped off, it was just nothingness. And I remember standing there and being very scared because I knew that if I stepped off that staircase, I was leaving everything that I had known, all of my memories, the definition of who I define myself as, my feelings, my memories, my ego, my everything, my family, what is family, all of the concepts I was leaving behind. And it was so scary because we are so conditioned to be attached to and define things in life. That's what makes us in this reality, this plane of existence, feel whole. It brings a normalcy to us all. And there's beauty in that because there's so many things that we can connect on between our beings, reflecting on memories, reflecting on this concept of humans and this concept of family and so on and so forth, of love and everything. But this was letting that all go. And was maybe one of the scariest things I've ever done in my entire, probably the hardest thing I've ever done in my entire life. And I ended up stepping off. And the feeling of fear and all of that just immediately went away. And it was just complete bliss and expansiveness. But I feel that experience for me has helped me come to this acceptance of life and others and have more empathy for everything. And from that, be able to exist in life and give in life and respond in life in such a way that is beneficial to a certain number of people on this planet. And I'm just very grateful for that experience and just the whole process that we've gone through with our dog handling and where we're at today.
Well, I feel that that experience is so relatable in different form. That sounds like a very pure expression. But there have been so many times in our relationship, working and otherwise, where I get all cozy in my box. And it's a comfortable box. It feels really good. Why would I step outside of that? Because I could go into something that is not comfortable. And that is scary.
Right.
To different varying degrees, depending on the situation and what we're moving through in life.
Mm-hmm.
How hard we hold on to our box. And when presented with that option, sometimes it can be met with not acceptance,
Opposition,
with reactivity, with holding on to, with protecting, with a lot of fear.
Mm-hmm.
And something that I'm very grateful that you've helped me learn over the years, because you love change a lot, is that acceptance of change and moving into something that is unknown and moving outside of something that is your box, that is your comfort zone. And I want to say 100% of the time, but I'll say like 95% just in case. It is that experience.
Right.
Where I am so grateful that I moved through that and moved into something scary that was presented to me, because it has turned into something so beautiful.
Right.
And having that let go, which I have lots of experience knowing how hard that is.
Right.
And all the like little demons that can come up and out into the environment from that. And you've felt those from me over the years of just, hey, let's pivot. And then I'm in reactivity.
Right.
Instead of over time, I've learned that it's okay.
And that, go ahead.
And to just be more trusting.
Right. And that ebb and flow, it's almost like the creation and dissolution of comfort.
Yeah.
We're so familiar with that when we start asking a dog to change and dissolve who they think they are and all of the feelings that have benefited them
And what
to
brings them
now,
comfort.
and what brings them comfort, which are those feelings. When we start asking them to change, we understand that
Yeah.
it's scary and it can be hard and it can take time to change and to trust and to lean into change.
And like things can come out.
And yeah,
defense mechanisms start coming out left and right
exactly.
because it's self-preservation, it's safety.
Yeah. And so we're soft with them in the sense of it can be hard.
Yeah.
And we don't try to make that change any more challenging than it already is. And we definitely don't want to make it painful or to correct them for feeling fear in the face of change.
The thing is that the
punish them.
The change itself can be painful.
Exactly.
So I don't need to add any more into what they're feeling.
Right. Or distract from the fact. Because then, I mean, distracting from the change, then you don't really go through the change. But yeah, I think that the ebb and flow has been so beautiful to experience, both within our own relationship as well as meditation and life and dog handling and horse handling. And
yeah, it's a practice
to
too.
have a level of respect for the process.
Yeah.
An appreciation for the process and understand that it can take time.
Yeah.
So, but anyways, thank you all for listening.
Yeah, thank you.
We're really looking forward to the next few podcasts and kind of just expressing some more deeper, finer feelings that are a little more sensitive and taboo, you could say. But until then, thank you and enjoy.
Yeah, thank you.